What's up YouTube? Welcome to part 3 in my series of Merciless Palace guides. In this guide I will be covering some tips for Kaneshiro's Palace. Since you've gone through Kamoshida and Madarame's Palace, clearing this palace will be a lot easier, so there won't be as much to say in terms of how to beat it. Instead, I will focus on the usual money and persona prep needed for Kaneshiro's boss fight and for daily activities after clearing his palace. With that being said, you shouldn't underestimate your enemies since they can still absolutely destroy you. Kaneshiro's Palace will contain 4 visits. The first visit is purely scouting, so you don't get anything from that except a wasted day. You don't even get any treasure. The second visit occurs on June 20th, and there isn't much you can do in terms of equipment preparation since Iwai will not have any new stock for you, and you're probably very broke anyway. However, you can still buy consumables from Tei. If you don't have any revival beads or revivadrin, then I suggest you get about 2 or 3 since some of your party members are most likely gonna die on the second forced encounter. To make up for the lack of better equips, we're gonna be using a lot of status effects since the first encounter contains 2 sets of Onis which have no weaknesses. For your party I suggest bringing Yusuke, Anne, and Morgana. Morgana has Lucky Punch which allows knockdowns, and Anne has Dorminia which is a high chance sleep skill. The 2 personas I used were Obarian for Lucky Punch and his physical resistance, and a persona that knows Confuse. Might as well try to make a little extra cash while we're doing this. Once you defeat the Onis, you'll have the opportunity to heal up and prepare for the next encounter. During this time, I swapped Anne for Ryuji since the next encounter contains a Suihi who really loves to cast Mabufula. That spell really hurts, so you don't want him hitting you twice with that because Anne happens to be in the party. After this battle is done, if you use Confuse, hopefully you got some money out of that. What you do next will depend on how much money you have. Since I was a broke high school student and didn't have 115k in my pocket for daily activities and a holy stone, I had to infiltrate Kaneshiro's Palace on day 1. If you have that much, you can hold off for a more opportune time, but it shouldn't affect the schedule that much, if at all. It costs 50k, money which I didn't have, to fully upgrade my party's gear, so I bought whatever armor I could for my weakest used character to increase survivability, but you don't have to buy equips until you have to steal Kaneshiro's heart. When you enter the palace for the 3rd time, your goal will be to reach the treasure. I did a lot of party swapping since enemy weaknesses change about halfway through the palace and for mini bosses. My initial party consisted of Ryuji, Morgana, and Makoto. Morgana is only useful here since he has Lucky Punch, which helps knock down those pesky Onis that don't have any weaknesses. Once you get the keys and unlock the vault to the laundering office, I suggest swapping out Ryuji for Anne since shadows beyond this point will no longer have weaknesses to electric attacks and will instead have a weakness to fire. At the end of the laundering office, you'll encounter a mini-boss. I swapped out Anne for Ryuji because this encounter contains another Suki. I also replaced Morgana with Yusuke since Morgana dies very easily, and Yusuke has a resistance to ice. Once that battle's over, I swapped Anne and Morgana back in until the next mini-boss. For the next mini-boss, I swapped out Morgana with Ryuji since Takemi Nakata uses Mazionga, which KOs Morgana and gives it an extra attack. After that's over, I replaced Ryuji for Morgana for the rest of the run until I reach the treasure. When you reach the treasure, this will complete the story mission, but before you leave, you'll have a few goals to meet. First, you should be at least level 19 once you reach the treasure. This allows you to complete at most 2 more of the twins' requests. You'll have to fuse Shisa and inherit free if you didn't do it in Madarame's Palace by fusing Jack Frost and Mikami. You might have to fuse Mikami as well if you didn't get its mask in Madarame's Palace. You can fuse Mikami by combining Nekomata and Silky, or Lean and City with Agathon or Mandrake. As a bonus, at this point you will unlock Gallows, so you can strengthen Jack Frost to level 13 by feeding it 2 level 19 plus personas or a jewel persona, and allowing it to learn Rakunda. If you decide to feed Jack Frost 2 personas, you'll have to hold off on making Matador until you come back to steal Kaneshiro's heart. When you make Shisa, you can transfer over free to satisfy the strength requirement and Rakunda to make Kaneshiro's second form easier to deal with. Since Shisa is resistant to a majority of his attacks, you can reduce his defense without having to worry about dying. The next request is to make Matador with Magaru, which can be obtained by fusing Nekomata and Obarian. I had Matador inherit Magaru and resist fear. After speaking to the twins to get strength to rank 3, I opted to use Matador with Genbu to create Inugami, who nullifies curse attacks. This is useful for Kaneshiro's first form since he loves to use curse attacks that can really hurt. I had Inugami inherit Swift Strike and Resist Fear, which will also be very useful against Kaneshiro. The second goal is to get Onmoraki to level 15 in order to learn Confuse Boost for Mementos money farming. We're gonna need a lot of money, so doing this will help alleviate the grind in future palaces. Gallows was my preferred way of leveling it up since it was easier. Make sure to strengthen it once before you leave and have an extra persona on hand to strengthen it the next day. Skipping ahead of where we are now, you'll have to visit Mementos once before you get to Fudaba's palace, so you'll need to get most of your money in Mementos after clearing Kaneshiro's palace. Creating the farming persona will most likely happen after defeating Kaneshiro, since you'll have to strengthen Onmoraki multiple times before it hits level 15 unless you're feeding it jewels. If you're at least level 24, you should make Sandman by fusing Onmoraki and Rakshasa. Otherwise, make a persona with the highest luck that can inherit Palimpa and Confuse Boost. I chose Lian City. Make sure when fusing, the persona will gain luck when it levels up. After you have your farming persona, continue to strengthen it using Gallows, feeding it your non-crucial personas, or using the compendium if you have extra money lying around. Once you have your farming persona set up, you'll have to farm at least another 300k, since you'll be spending about 10k a day on fortune readings. If you don't own 4 SP adhesive 3s, you'll need to add in the amount you need to buy the rest. This isn't as much as it sounds since the Memento mini-bosses should give you around 20k per turn. So going back to Kaneshiro's palace, you'll need to get what money you can before you go to Mementos. You'll need 100k to buy the Holy Stone from the Fortune Teller, you'll need another 50k to fully upgrade your equipment along with buying items before facing Kaneshiro, and roughly another 20k for activities that you need to do between Kaneshiro's palace and your next Mementos visit. So in total, you'll need about 170k in your pocket. This shouldn't require too much grinding. As for me, I left with about 150k not including treasures. The treasures made up for the other 20k and more after being sold. If for some reason you don't have enough, or the treasures didn't give you as much yen as you expected, you'll have another opportunity to reach your money goals when you return to steal Kaneshiro's heart. This last part is optional as this requires a big grind. If you want to advance the Fortune Confidant as quickly as possible, you will need to hit level 26 to fuse Clotho. Otherwise, you can wait until Fudaba's palace to get the Jewel Demon Stone of Scone, or wait until after clearing Fudaba's palace, at which point you will be at least level 26. If you decide to do the low level run, you will only be about a week behind, and required to buy a gift for her, so it's not that big a deal even though it might seem like a lot. If you choose to grind to level 26, there are 2 grind spots to pick from. However, unlike the previous Red Shadow grind spots, these Red Shadow encounters are not fixed, but they are still easy. The first Red Shadow is located at the end of the laundering office and is my preferred grind spot since it's faster to reset and safer. This Red Shadow encounter will contain 4 enemies which are limited to Lian City and Yaxini, who are weak to fire and nuclear respectively. After completing the fight, run back to the safe room and do a save load to reset. The second Red Shadow is located inside Vault 1F. This encounter is also not fixed, and will give more experience since it will contain 5 enemies instead of 4, and includes Rakshasas which are higher level. The biggest downside to farming this encounter is that it will take longer to reset as you have to run all the way back to the door. Once all that is done, or you had enough, you can leave. Send the calling card and come back in 2 days. This brings us to the last visit. When you come back to steal this heart, there isn't much left to do except finishing up anything you missed from the last run. This means open any chests you may have missed, collecting more treasure for more money, and hope to find a Jewel Demon, and stocking up on personas to use for Gallows. Once you're ready, equip Inugami and take Kaneshiro's heart. With all that said, there really isn't much else to tell you. Hopefully some of my tips has helped make your Merciless run a bit easier at this point. If you guys have any more questions, comments, or anything, feel free to leave a message. Links to the mini-bosses and Kaneshiro's boss fight as well as my schedule will be included in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.